The kiss happened at exactly 10:47 p.m. 200 witnesses. A dozen camera phones. One very expensive ballroom in downtown Chicago. And Garrett Brooks, self-made tech billionaire, newly remarried, king of his own empire, standing frozen in absolute horror as the most dangerous man in the city claimed his ex-wife's mouth like he owned it. Because he did. Not just her lips. Not just her heart. But the company Garrett had built his entire life on. The code. The patents. The $2 billion valuation he'd celebrated just hours before. All of it belonged to the brilliant black woman in the red dress who just smiled against the Korean Mafia boss's mouth and whispered two words that would destroy everything. I win. If you love stories about strong women who refuse to stay silent, powerful men who claim what's theirs, and revenge served ice cold, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is about to get intense. Now, let's get into it. The October wind off Lake Michigan carried the scent of expensive perfume and older money through the open terrace doors of the Sinclair Hotel's grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across 200 of Chicago's elite, tech moguls, politicians, socialites, and the kind of people whose names appeared in Forbes more often than Facebook. Garrett Brooks stood at the center of it all, his hand resting possessively on the small of his new wife's back. Victoria Brooks, formerly Victoria Ashford of the Connecticut Ashfords, smiled with the practiced grace of old money meeting new. Her champagne-colored dress probably cost more than most people's cars. Diamond studs caught the light as she laughed at something a state senator said, tilting her head just so. Garrett looked at her with undisguised pride. This was the image he'd wanted all along. The right kind of wife. The right kind of family. The right kind of future. Not like. He stopped that thought before it could fully form. He hadn't thought about Naledi Hayes in months. There was no reason to start now. Congratulations again, Garrett, Richard Chen from Apex Ventures raised his glass. Series D funding at a $2 billion valuation. That's the dream. The Sentinel system practically sells itself, Garrett replied smoothly, accepting the praise he'd grown accustomed to receiving. When you build something revolutionary, investors notice. When you build something. The words came so easily now. He'd said them so many times, he almost believed them himself. And with the DoD contract pending, Victoria added, her fingers curling against her husband's sleeve, we're looking at government implementation by Q2. Smart and beautiful, Richard said approvingly. You're a lucky man, Brooks. Don't I know it? Garrett pulled Victoria closer, kissed her temple. This was everything he'd worked for. Everything he deserved. The Sentinel system, a predictive security algorithm that could analyze patterns across multiple data streams and anticipate threats before they materialized, had made him a legend in the cybersecurity world. 3 years ago, he'd been a mid-level programmer with dreams bigger than his bank account. Now he was the CEO of Sentinel Tech, courted by venture capitalists and government agencies alike. The fact that he hadn't written a single line of the original code was a detail he'd learned to compartmentalize. Mr. Brooks, his assistant Peter appeared at his elbow, looking uncertain. There's a situation. Garrett frowned. What kind of situation? The guest list. There's someone here who, Peter lowered his voice. Naledi Hayes just arrived. The champagne turned to acid in Garrett's stomach. That's impossible. She wasn't invited. No, sir. But she's here as someone's plus one. Whose? Peter's expression turned carefully neutral. Min Jae-ri. The name landed like a grenade. Victoria looked up, confused. Who's Min Jae-ri? Nobody, Garrett said too quickly. Just, handle it, Peter. Quietly. But it was already too late. The crowd near the entrance had shifted, parting like a curtain being drawn back to reveal center stage. And there, framed in the doorway like a vision designed specifically to haunt him, stood Naledi Hayes. She looked nothing like the woman he divorced 3 years ago. That Naledi had been soft edges and hopeful eyes, someone who'd believed in partnership and trust and all those naive concepts that didn't survive contact with real ambition. She'd worn her natural hair in a modest fro, dressed in thrift store blazers and jeans, spent 16-hour days coding in their cramped apartment while he'd handled the business side. This Naledi was something else entirely. Her hair was styled in goddess locks that cascaded past her shoulders, adorned with gold cuffs that caught the light. The red dress she wore was designer. He'd been married to Victoria long enough to recognize Valentino when he saw it, and it hugged every curve before flowing to the floor in a dramatic train. Gold hoops, gold heels, gold painted on her lips. She looked like royalty. She looked expensive. She looked dangerous. But it wasn't Naledi who made Garrett's blood run cold. It was the man beside her. Min Jae-ri was not someone you wanted to see at your celebration party. He was not someone you wanted to see anywhere, unless you'd specifically requested a meeting, and even then, you approached with caution. The Ri family didn't appear in Forbes. They didn't give interviews or attend tech conferences. What they did was control approximately 60% of Chicago's underground economy through a network of legitimate businesses that served as fronts for operations most people preferred not to think about. Shipping. Real estate. Private security. Import-export. And beneath it all, the machinery of organized crime that had run smoothly for 3 generations. Min Jae-ri was the youngest son and current head of operations. 34 years old, educated at Oxford, fluent in 6 languages, and reportedly responsible for expanding the Ri family's influence into digital territories that made their traditional enterprises look quaint by comparison. He was also the most beautiful man Garrett had ever seen, in the way that straight men could acknowledge beauty when it came packaged with enough danger to make it admissible. Min Jae stood just over 6 feet, lean and elegant in a black suit that probably cost more than Garrett's car. His dark hair was styled back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and cold precision. He moved with the kind of grace that came from either classical training or combat training, and knowing the Ri family's reputation, probably both. His hand rested on the small of Naledi's back. The same way Garrett's hand rested on Victoria's. The message was clear. "Darling," Victoria whispered, "you look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," Garrett muttered. He watched as Naledi and Min Jae moved through the crowd. People parted for them instinctively, the way prey animals scattered when predators passed through. Most of the guests probably didn't even know why, they just felt it in their bones. Danger. Power. Authority that didn't need to announce itself. Min Jae guided Naledi toward the bar with one hand, his attention seemingly casual, but Garrett recognized the calculation in those dark eyes. He was mapping the room, cataloging threats, assessing weak points. And he was heading directly toward them. "Garrett," Victoria's voice had an edge now. "What's going on? Who is that woman?" "My ex-wife. You told me she moved to California. You said you hadn't seen her since the divorce. I thought she had." "I haven't." "Then what is she doing here? And who is that man?" "Someone very dangerous," Garrett said quietly. "Just, let me handle this." But Victoria Brooks née Ashford hadn't been raised to back down from social confrontations. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and prepared to defend her territory with all the weapons her upbringing had provided. Naledi reached them first. Up close, she was even more devastating. Her skin glowed like it had been lit from within, and her dark eyes held secrets that made Garrett's palms sweat. The scent of her perfume, something expensive and unfamiliar, hit him like a physical thing. "Garrett," she said, her voice warm honey over broken glass. "Congratulations on your Series D. $2 billion. That's impressive." "Naledi." He tried to match her casual tone and failed. "I didn't know you were in Chicago." "Oh, I've been here the whole time. We just travel in different circles now." Her gaze slid to Victoria, and something flickered in her expression too quickly to read. "You must be the new Mrs. Brooks." "Victoria, isn't it?" "That's right." Victoria's smile was pure society page politeness. "And you're the first Mrs. Brooks." "How nostalgic." "Ancient history," Naledi agreed lightly. Then Min Jae stepped forward, and the temperature in their small circle dropped 10 degrees. Garrett Brooks, his voice was accented silk, Korean-British inflections blending into something entirely his own. "I've been looking forward to meeting you. I'm Min Jae-ri." Garrett shook his hand because not shaking would be an insult, and insulting Min Jae-ri was how people ended up in very unfortunate situations. The grip was firm, controlled, and lasted exactly 2 seconds longer than comfortable. A power play. A warning. Mr. Ri, Garrett said carefully. I wasn't aware you were interested in cybersecurity. I'm interested in many things. Min Jae's thumb traced an absent pattern against Nality's back, a gesture so intimate it made Garrett's jaw clench. Innovation. Intellectual property. Making sure credit goes where it's deserved. Nality has been educating me extensively on your company's technology. Something cold slithered down Garrett's spine. Has she? The Sentinel system particularly fascinated me. Such elegant architecture. The kind of work that requires not just technical skill but genuine vision. Min Jae's dark eyes pinned him in place. Tell me, Mr. Brooks, when did you first conceptualize the predictive algorithm? Was it before or after your marriage? The question was a trap. Every possible answer was a trap. During, Garrett said, choosing his words like he was defusing a bomb. It was a collaborative period. Collaborative. Min Jae repeated the word as if tasting it. Interesting choice of terminology. Nality placed her hand on Min Jae's chest, a calming gesture that spoke of intimacy and history. Darling, we didn't come here to interrogate Garrett about ancient history. This is a celebration. The endearment hung in the air between them. Darling. When had Nality Hayes started calling Korean mafia bosses darling? You're absolutely right, Jagiya, Min Jae said softly, covering her hand with his own. The Korean endearment, honey, sweetheart, carried weight that made Victoria's eyebrows climb. Forgive me. I get protective when it comes to Nality's legacy. Legacy? Victoria interjected. I don't understand. What does Garrett's ex-wife have to do with Sentinel Tech? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting for someone to cut the wrong wire. Nality's smile was all edges. Nothing at all, she said sweetly. Legally speaking, I have absolutely nothing to do with the Sentinel system. Garrett made sure of that in the divorce settlement. Didn't you, darling? The way she said darling when addressing him carried none of the warmth she'd used with Min Jae. It was acid wrapped in sugar. The settlement was fair, Garrett said, hating how defensive he sounded. You agreed to the terms. I did, Nality agreed. Every single term. Including the ones buried in subsection 7C of the Intellectual Property Agreement. Garrett's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about. No? Nality tilted her head, and the gesture reminded him of the girl he'd married, the one who used to solve impossible problems at 3 a.m, who'd believed he loved her for her mind and not what he could take from it. That's strange. Because your lawyers certainly knew what they were agreeing to. I made sure of that. Min Jae checked his watch, a gesture so casual it could only be choreographed. It's nearly 10 o'clock. Shall we? Shall we what? Garrett demanded. Make a toast, Min Jae said. It's customary at celebrations, isn't it? Before Garrett could respond, Min Jae had signaled one of the servers. Within seconds, a microphone appeared. Within a minute, the ballroom's attention had shifted to their small group near the bar. Ladies and gentlemen, Min Jae's voice carried the natural authority of someone accustomed to commanding rooms full of dangerous people. I hope you'll forgive the interruption. I wanted to take a moment to congratulate our host on his tremendous success. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Garrett felt like he was watching an execution and he couldn't tell if he was the prisoner or just a witness. Sentinel Tech's valuation at $2 billion is indeed impressive, Min Jae continued. The Sentinel system has been called revolutionary. Game-changing. The kind of innovation that comes along once in a generation. He paused, letting the praise settle. Which makes it all the more important that we acknowledge the true architect of that innovation. Garrett's heart stopped. Min Jae, he started. But Nality stepped forward, and Min Jae's arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her against his side in a gesture of possession that made 200 people suddenly very interested in what was happening. Nality Hayes, Min Jae said, wrote every line of code that became the Sentinel system. She designed the architecture. She developed the predictive algorithms. She built the foundation of a $2 billion company while her then husband told investors he was the sole visionary. The ballroom had gone silent. Garrett felt Victoria's stare like a physical thing. "That's not," he started, but his voice cracked. "That's not true." The Sentinel system was a collaborative effort. "Show them," Min-jae said softly, looking at Naledi. She pulled out her phone with the grace of someone who'd rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. Within seconds, the ballroom's projection screens, meant for Garrett's presentation later, flickered to life. Code scrolled across the screens. Lines and lines of elegant, complex architecture that Garrett recognized immediately because he'd been taking credit for it for 3 years. But these weren't just screenshots. These were dated files. Time-stamped commits. Git repositories with Naledi's username and Naledi's comments and Naledi's late-night problem-solving documented in excruciating detail. Every file dated to their marriage. Every innovation traced back to her. "I built that system in our apartment," Naledi said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "While working 2 jobs to pay our rent because Garrett was focusing on the business side. I wrote code from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m., then got up at 7 to go to my day job. For 18 months. The screens continued scrolling. Proof. Evidence. And digital paper trail that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. When the first investor meeting came up, Naledi continued, Garrett said he should do the pitch alone. He said investors wanted to back a singular vision, not a partnership. He promised we'd correct the record later, once we had funding. Her laugh was bitter music. Later never came. The patents were filed under his name. The press releases quoted only him. And when I finally demanded recognition, she stopped, and Min-jae's arm tightened around her. When I demanded what was mine, Garrett offered me a choice, accept a settlement and walk away quietly, or fight him in court with his investor-funded legal team while I had nothing. Naledi, Garrett's voice was hoarse. It wasn't like that. You're oversimplifying. Am I? She looked at him with something that might have been pity. Tell me, Garrett. Tell everyone here. Tell your new wife. Did you write the Sentinel system's core predictive algorithm? Silence. Did you design the multi-layered analysis architecture? His hands were shaking. Did you solve the processing speed problem that made real-time threat assessment possible? We worked on it together, he managed. That's not what I asked. Min-jae stepped forward, and his presence shifted everything. This wasn't just a wronged ex-wife confronting her former husband anymore. This was something more dangerous. The Series D funding agreement, Min-jae said quietly, was finalized 3 days ago. $65 million at a $2 billion valuation, with a $10 million secondary offering to existing shareholders. Garrett nodded numbly. So that triggers subsection 7C of your divorce settlement. The words hit like a physical blow. What? Garrett's voice cracked. No. That clause was contingent on a capital event exceeding $50 million that fundamentally alters the company's ownership structure, Min-jae quoted from memory. The Series D qualifies. My lawyers have verified it with 3 independent firms, including your own counsel. Peter appeared at Garrett's elbow, his face ashen. He handed over a tablet without speaking. Garrett read the legal brief with dawning horror. This is... He couldn't finish the sentence. Enforceable, Min-jae finished for him. As of yesterday, when the funding officially cleared, Naledi Hayes owns 22% of Sentinel Tech, making her the second largest shareholder after you. The ballroom erupted. Voices overlapped, shock, confusion, a few barely suppressed laughs from people who enjoyed watching someone else's empire crack. Camera phones appeared. This would be on social media before midnight. Victoria grabbed Garrett's arm. 22%? How is that possible? You told me the divorce settlement was clean. It was. Garrett turned to Naledi, desperation making him reckless. You can't do this. That clause was insurance. You said you'd never use it unless Unless you what? Naledi's voice cut through the noise. Unless you tried to sell the company I built? Unless you signed government contracts based on my work. Unless you stood in front of people and accepted praise for innovation that came from my mind, my sleepless nights, my sacrifices. She stepped closer, and Min-jae let her go, let her stand on her own for this moment. You erased me, Garrett. You took my name out of every story. You built a dynasty on my code and my vision, and you didn't leave me even a footnote. So yes. I'm using the clause. I'm taking back what's mine. This is corporate theft, Victoria hissed. We'll fight it. We'll. You'll lose, Min-jae said calmly. I've had multiple legal teams review the settlement agreement. It's ironclad. Naledi inserted that clause specifically for this scenario, and your husband's lawyers signed off on it because they assumed it would never be triggered. He smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression Garrett had ever seen. They underestimated her. Everyone did. But not me. And then Min-jae did something that would be screen captured, GIF-ed, and analyzed in gossip columns for months afterward. He turned to Naledi, cupped her face in both hands with a gentleness that contradicted everything his reputation suggested, and kissed her. Not a peck. Not a performance. A real kiss. Deep and possessive and full of promise, right there in front of 200 witnesses and Garrett Brooks's new wife. When they broke apart, Naledi was smiling like the sun coming up. As of tomorrow, Min-jae announced to the stunned ballroom, his hand finding Naledi's like it belonged there, Naledi Hayes will be joining Sentinel Tech's board of directors. She'll also be consulting on all future development of the Sentinel system, with appropriate credit and compensation. He looked directly at Garrett. And if there are any attempts to freeze her out, dilute her shares, or otherwise interfere with her rightful ownership, you'll be dealing with me. Personally. Do we understand each other? Garrett understood perfectly. You didn't cross the Ree family. You didn't steal from them. And you definitely didn't disrespect someone they'd claimed as theirs. Naledi Hayes had walked into this party on the arm of Chicago's most dangerous man, and she'd walked out with everything Garrett had tried to take from her. Okay, can we just talk about that kiss for a second? Min-jae really said, "This is mine," in front of everyone. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think happens next. Should Naledi forgive Garrett or make him suffer? Let me know below. Now back to the story, because things are about to get even more intense. The penthouse overlooked Lake Michigan like a throne room overlooking a kingdom. Naledi stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights reflect off water the color of ink and secrets. Behind her, Min-jae's apartment sprawled in clean lines and expensive simplicity, the kind of space that cost millions precisely because it looked like nobody had tried to make it look expensive. She still wore the red dress. Her heels sat by the door. The gold cuffs in her locks caught the ambient lighting. She felt like she was vibrating out of her skin. You're too quiet, Min-jae said from the open kitchen. He'd shed his jacket and rolled his sleeves to his elbows, revealing forearms that made Naledi's mouth go dry no matter how many times she saw them. Drink this. He handed her a glass of wine that probably cost more than her first car. I can't believe we actually did it, she whispered. You did it. Min-jae's fingers brushed her shoulder blade, a touch so light she might have imagined it except she felt it everywhere. I just made sure people were paying attention. Naledi laughed, and it came out shaky. You kissed me in front of 200 people. I did. Garrett looked like he was going to have a stroke. I was counting on it. She turned to face him, and the look in Min-jae's eyes made her breath catch. They'd been dancing around this thing between them for 6 months, ever since he'd walked into the library where she'd been working her day job and asked if she was the Naledi Hayes who designed the Sentinel system. How do you know about that? She'd asked, suspicion and exhaustion making her reckless. Nobody knows about that. I make it my business to know things, he'd replied, sitting down across from her like he had every right to her time and space. Especially when someone as talented as you is shelving books instead of building empires. That conversation had changed everything. Min-jae had listened to her story without interruption. He'd asked to see her code. He'd reviewed the divorce settlement with the same attention to detail he probably applied to 7-figure deals. And then he'd said, I can help you destroy him. If you want. She'd wanted. God, she'd wanted. But somewhere between planning Garrett's professional destruction and executing it, something else had developed. Something neither of them had planned for. Something dangerous. "Why did you kiss me?" Naledi asked now, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to do that. We'd already won." Min-jae set down his wine glass with careful precision. "Do you want the tactical answer or the honest one?" "Both. Tactically, it established a clear message that you're under my protection. No one will move against you without considering the consequences of crossing me." He stepped closer, and Naledi's pulse jumped. "Honestly? I've wanted to kiss you for 6 months. I was tired of waiting for the right moment, so I made one." The air between them felt electric. "This is a bad idea," Naledi said, but she didn't move away. Everything about this is complicated. I'm aware. Your family doesn't control who I kiss. The business can handle itself for one night. I'm not." She stopped, trying to find words for the tangle of emotions in her chest. "I'm not good at this. Trusting people. Letting people in." Garrett made sure of that. Something fierce flashed across Min-jae's face. "I am not Garrett Brooks. I know. Do you?" He cupped her face the same way he had at the party, and Naledi felt herself melting into the touch. "Because I need you to understand something, Naledi Hayes. When I claim something, I don't let go. When I decide someone is mine, I don't share. And I've decided, if you'll let me, that you're mine." "That's very possessive," she whispered. "I'm aware of that too. I should probably run away. Probably. I'm not going to." Good. This kiss was different from the one at the party. That had been a performance, a declaration, a weapon. This was private. Real. A promise made in the dark that scared Naledi more than any confrontation with her ex-husband ever could. Because this meant something. Min-jae kissed her like he'd been starving for it, like she was the only thing that mattered in his carefully controlled world. His hands slid into her locks, careful of the gold cuffs, and Naledi made a sound that should have embarrassed her, except she was too busy trying to remember how to breathe. When they finally broke apart, Min-jae rested his forehead against hers. "Stay tonight," he said quietly. "No expectations. No pressure. Just, stay." Naledi thought about the apartment she'd been renting on the south side. Thought about going home alone to celebrate her victory in silence. Thought about this man who'd helped her reclaim everything she'd lost, asking for nothing in return except her company. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." The Sentinel Tech Board meeting had the atmosphere of a funeral where everyone was pretending to be professional. Naledi sat at the conference table in her designated seat, second largest shareholder, right across from Garrett, and tried not to smile at how uncomfortable he looked. To his credit, Garrett had handled the transition better than she'd expected. No legal challenges. No public tantrums. He'd released a statement acknowledging her significant contributions to early development and welcoming her to the board. It was the corporate equivalent of a hostage video, and everyone knew it. Victoria had filed for divorce within 2 weeks. Apparently learning that your husband's billion-dollar company was built on stolen code was a deal-breaker, even for old money. The Connecticut Ashfords did not appreciate being associated with intellectual property theft. "Item 7 on the agenda," Peter said nervously. He'd kept his job as Garrett's assistant, but Naledi had noticed he was significantly more polite to her now. "The DoD contract proposal." Garrett cleared his throat. "The Department of Defense has requested a presentation of the Sentinel system for potential implementation in national security infrastructure. This would be a..." "No," Naledi said. Every head in the conference room turned. "I'm sorry?" Garrett's voice was carefully controlled. "No. The Sentinel system isn't ready for federal implementation. The threat assessment algorithms need another 8 months of refinement, and the data privacy protocols aren't sufficient for government use. Our technical team says." "Your technical team is wrong." Naledi pulled up a presentation on the room's screens. "I've reviewed the current build. There are 47 potential vulnerability points that need to be addressed before we go anywhere near a DoD contract. She walked them through each issue with the same precision that had built the system in the first place. Watched Garrett's face cycle through frustration, anger, and finally resignation as the other board members began nodding along. Because she was right, and everyone in the room knew it. Fine, Garrett said when she finished. We'll delay the DoD pitch. But that puts us behind schedule for Q2 revenue projections. Then we adjust the projections, Naledi said calmly. I'm not rushing my system to market before it's ready. Not for revenue. Not for publicity. Not for anything. My system. She said it deliberately, and Garrett flinched. After the meeting, she found him waiting by the elevators. Naledi, he said, and there was something in his voice she'd never heard before. Can we talk? Privately? She considered refusing. Considered just walking away and letting him stew in his regret. But curiosity won. They ended up in an empty conference room with a view of the Chicago skyline. Garrett stood by the windows, looking older than she remembered. Tired. I'm sorry, he said finally. Naledi blinked. What? I'm sorry. For all of it. For taking credit, for erasing you, he stopped, ran a hand through his hair. For being too much of a coward to admit that I never could have built any of this without you. The apology hung in the air between them. Why now? Naledi asked. Because I forced my way back in? Because you don't have a choice? Because I looked at our old code last night, Garrett said quietly. Really looked at it. And I remembered you at 3 a.m. with your coffee mug and your headphones, solving problems I didn't even understand. I remembered how excited you'd get when something worked. How you'd explain things to me like I was smart enough to keep up. He turned to face her. I told myself I was protecting the business. That investors needed a singular vision. That you'd understand later. But the truth is, I was jealous. You were brilliant in a way I'd never be, and instead of celebrating that, I tried to take it from you. Naledi felt something crack in her chest. I built that system for us, she said, and her voice shook. For our future. I believed we were partners. We should have been. But we weren't. No, Garrett agreed. We weren't. And I can't take that back. But I can try to make it right going forward. The DoD contract, you're right. The system isn't ready. I was rushing because I wanted to prove something. To Victoria, to the board. To myself. He smiled sadly. But you don't have to prove anything to anyone, do you? You've got a Korean Mafia boss who looks at you like you hung the moon, and you've reclaimed everything I tried to steal. You won. This wasn't about winning, Naledi said softly. Wasn't it? No. It was about being seen. Being acknowledged. Getting credit for my own mind. She moved to the windows, looked out at the city that had almost broken her. I don't forgive you, she said finally. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I appreciate the apology. That's fair. And Garrett? If you ever try to take credit for my work again, if you even think about sidelining me, I won't need Min-jae's help to destroy you. I'll do it myself. He actually laughed. I believe you. They left the conference room with something that wasn't quite peace but wasn't quite war either. A ceasefire. A new understanding. Naledi could live with that. Min-jae was waiting in her new office when she returned. He sat in her chair like a king on a throne, reviewing something on his phone with the kind of focus that made him dangerous in business and lethal everywhere else. Breaking and entering? Naledi asked, closing the door behind her. That's beneath you. Your assistant let me in. Min-jae pocketed his phone and stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. She said you were eviscerating your ex-husband in a board meeting and didn't want to interrupt. I was correcting technical inaccuracies. How did he take it? About as well as you'd expect. Naledi let herself be pulled into Min-jae's arms, let herself relax for the first time all day. He apologized after. She felt Min-jae tense. Did he? A real apology. I think losing Victoria shook him. Good. Naledi leaned back to look at him. In the 3 months since the party, they'd been navigating this thing between them with the caution of people who knew exactly how badly it could go wrong. Min Jae's family was complicated. His business was dangerous. His world operated by rules Naledi was still learning. But he looked at her like she was the most important thing in his empire. And she was starting to believe he meant it. I have something for you, Min Jae said, releasing her to pull a folder from his jacket. Naledi opened it and felt her breath catch. Property deeds. Business licenses. Letters of intent from venture capitalists she recognized. What is this? Your next chapter. Min Jae leaned against her desk, watching her process the information. Sentinel Tech was your past. This is your future. Your own company. Your own vision. No partners. No one to take credit but you. The documents outlined a new cybersecurity firm, Hayes Security Solutions, with enough capital backing to compete with industry leaders. Office space already secured. Legal structure already established. All waiting for her signature. Min Jae, she whispered. I can't accept this. Why not? Because it's too much. Because I don't want to owe you. You don't. He caught her hand, pulled her close. This isn't a gift, Jagiya. It's an investment. I'm backing you because you're the smartest person I've ever met, and I want to be on the ground floor when you build your next empire. That's the only reason. His smile was pure wickedness. That, and I enjoy knowing that you're thriving. That the woman in my bed is also a CEO in her own right. Equal partners. In bed and in business. Everywhere. Naledi looked at the documents again. Looked at this man who'd helped her reclaim her past and was now offering her a future. Equal partners, she repeated. You mean that? I don't say things I don't mean. She believed him. Okay, Naledi said, and watched Min Jae's eyes light up. Let's build something. Together. Together, he agreed. And when he kissed her this time, it tasted like promises and possibility and the kind of future Naledi had stopped believing in. The kind where she got to be brilliant and acknowledged and loved, all at once. 6 months later. Hayes Security Solutions officially launched on a Tuesday. The press release went out at 9 a.m. By noon, Naledi had fielded calls from 3 Fortune 500 companies and a very interested DoD liaison who'd heard rumors about the Sentinel Systems' brilliant original architect. She sat in her corner office, actual corner office, with views of Lake Michigan and enough space for the team she was building, and tried not to feel overwhelmed by how much her life had changed. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. Come in, she called. Min Jae entered carrying coffee from the place she liked and a smile that made her stomach flip. Busy morning, he asked. Insane morning. Good insane, but still. She accepted the coffee gratefully. 3 potential contracts already. Only 3. I'm disappointed. Give it time. She pulled him down for a kiss that was probably inappropriate for office hours, except this was her company and she could kiss her boyfriend whenever she wanted. Thank you. For the coffee. For everything. You don't have to thank me every time. I do, actually. Because you helped me when I had nothing. When I was shelving books and trying not to drown in bitterness. Min Jae's expression softened in the way it only did for her. You had everything, Naledi. You just needed the right people to see it. You saw it. I did. Her phone buzzed with another incoming call. Naledi glanced at the screen and felt her eyebrows climb. It's Garrett. Want me to leave? No. She answered on speaker. Garrett. What can I do for you? Naledi. Hi. Her ex-husband sounded nervous. I saw the announcement about Hayes Security. Congratulations. Thank you. Listen, I know this is probably inappropriate, but the Sentinel system needs an upgrade. Major architecture overhaul. And my team is in over their heads. Naledi exchanged a glance with Min Jae, who looked amused. So hire a consultant, she said. I want to hire you. Silence. You want me to consult on the system I built? Naledi asked slowly. The one you spent 3 years taking credit for? Yes. At full rate. With complete creative control. And your name on every patent, every update, every public release. Garrett paused. I know I don't deserve your help. But the system does. And you're the only person who can do this right. It was possibly the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Naledi looked at Min-jae, who shrugged. Your call. Triple my normal consulting rate, she said. Public acknowledgement in the press release. And a donation to girls who code in my grandmother's name. Done, Garrett said immediately. All of it. Thank you, Naledi. After she hung up, Min-jae started laughing. What? Naledi demanded. You. Making your ex-husband pay triple rate to fix the system he stole. It's poetic. It's practical. Hayes Security needs capital, and Garrett needs to pay his debts. Literally. Min-jae pulled her to her feet, wrapped his arms around her waist. Have I mentioned that you're incredible? Not in the last hour. Consider yourself told. She kissed him, slow and sweet, and thought about the girl she'd been 3 years ago. Broken. Erased. Convinced she'd never matter. That girl wouldn't recognize who Naledi had become. CEO of her own company. Second largest shareholder in Sentinel Tech. Partner to a man who saw her brilliance and celebrated it instead of stealing it. What are you thinking about? Min-jae asked against her hair. My grandmother, Naledi said softly. She told me to make something of myself. Something real. I'd say you succeeded. I'd say we're just getting started. And when Min-jae smiled, that rare, genuine smile he saved only for her, Naledi knew exactly what her grandmother would say if she could see her now. That's my girl. That's my brilliant, unstoppable girl. She'd kept her promise. She'd made something real. And she was never letting anyone take it from her again. The wedding wasn't a spectacle. Naledi had seen enough of public performances to last a lifetime. Instead, she and Min-jae exchanged vows in a private ceremony at his family's estate, with only the people who mattered most in attendance. Her mother cried through the entire ceremony. Min-jae's grandmother, the real power behind the Ri family, gave a speech in Korean that made Min-jae's eyes suspiciously bright. And when the officiant pronounced them married, Naledi kissed her husband with the same fierce joy she brought to everything else in her life. Later, during the reception, she found Garrett standing awkwardly near the bar. She'd invited him. Against Min-jae's initial protests and her own better judgment, she'd sent an invitation because she needed him to see this. Needed him to witness what she'd built from the ashes of what he'd tried to destroy. Congratulations, Garrett said when she approached. You look beautiful. Thank you. Naledi's dress was custom, designed in collaboration between a Korean designer Min-jae's family favored and a black designer from Chicago Naledi had discovered. The result was stunning, traditional hanbok silhouettes merged with African-inspired textiles, creating something entirely new. Something that honored both her heritage and Min-jae's. Hayes Security is doing well, Garrett said. I've been following the press. We just signed our 10th major contract. Fortune 100 company. That's amazing, Naledi. Really? She studied him for a moment. He looked different than he had a year ago. Humbler. More honest. Victoria's divorce had taken half his assets. The public acknowledgement of Naledi's contributions had changed how the tech world saw him. He was no longer the solo genius founder, just another CEO who'd gotten lucky and knew it. Why did you come? Naledi asked. You could have sent your regrets. Because I needed to see you happy, Garrett said simply. Really happy. Not just successful, anyone can see you're successful. But happy. With someone who deserves you. He glanced toward the dance floor, where Min-jae was speaking with his brothers. He looks at you the way I should have. Like you're the center of his universe. He does, Naledi agreed softly. Good. Garrett set down his drink. I won't stay long. I just wanted you to know that I'm glad you won. Truly. You deserved everything you fought for. Garrett, Naledi said as he turned to leave. For what it's worth, I hope you find what I found. Someone who sees you. All of you. Not what you can give them or build for them. Just you. Thank you. He smiled sadly. I hope so too. After he left, Min-jae appeared at her side. Checking on your ex at our wedding, he asked, but there was no jealousy in his tone. Just curiosity. Making peace with my past, Naledi corrected. There's a difference. And are you? At peace? She turned to face him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd helped her reclaim her power and then built her a throne to sit on. I am, she said. With everything. The past, the present, the future. Good. Min-jae pulled her onto the dance floor, held her close as music swelled around them. Because we have about 60 years of future to get through, and I plan to enjoy every minute. Only 60? I'm being conservative. Naledi laughed, and it felt like freedom. She'd started as a girl with a promise to her grandmother. She'd become a woman erased by the man she loved. She'd transformed into a warrior who took back everything stolen from her. And now? Now she was exactly who she was meant to be. Naledi Rhee. CEO. Innovator. Wife to a man who would burn the world down before letting anyone diminish her. And she was just getting started. The future stretched ahead like code waiting to be written, full of infinite possibilities and elegant solutions and the kind of love that made everything else worthwhile. She'd made something of herself. Something real. Something that would last. Y'all. I need a minute to recover from this story. From stolen code to CEO, from heartbreak to finding a man who literally kissed her in front of the world, Naledi really said, watch me rise. If you loved this story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you never miss the next one. Drop a comment and tell me, Team Min-jae or nah? Would you have forgiven Garrett? What should I write next? Thank you so much for watching, and remember, never let anyone steal your shine. Until next time, loves.